Hello, I'm Jeff Johnston, host of the Living Undeterred podcast, and today I have a great guest. Just got done reading her book, Freedom, 7 Steps to Thrive in Life and Business. Who doesn't want to do that, right? Tina Kadish, thanks for being on the show, and I'm excited to talk to you about your book and about a lot of other things that we talked about a few weeks ago.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me, Jeff. This is a pleasure and honor to be here to share to your listeners about my book and messaging, and hope that it will resonate with some of your listeners.
Now, you're in the greater New York area, is that right? Or
I am. I'm in the greater New York, in the Danbury, Connecticut area.
Okay. You been there your whole life?
I have been in Connecticut all my life, believe it or not. I've traveled outside of Connecticut, but I've always lived here.
Yeah, I've been out there a few times. I know in our tour we have stops, obviously, in every state coming up. And I'm not sure in Connecticut if we have ironed out a spot. But I actually was on the phone today with an individual from the East Coast out there in the Maryland area that is interested in helping us on the tour. But we'll talk about that a little bit later. But I want to talk a lot about today about your book, because first of all, I want to congratulate you on making it an easy read. Someone with attention deficit, a book that's this thick with just intense chapters and stuff can't hold my attention. But your book is short, concise. It's a quick read. I think today, with the way everybody's in a fast food world, those type of books are a little more effective. So when you thought about writing your book, was that one of your ideas? Was to keep it pretty short and simple?
It did. I wanted it simple, but I wanted it also to be a book that people can walk away with action steps. In each chapter, there's action steps that people can apply and really use it as not just a book that they're going to read and put on a shelf and gather dust, that they're actually going to take some action, because I believe it's all about taking action.
Yeah, it is. I mean, we all listen to motivational podcasts and we read things and then we put them down and then we go back to our couch and go to watch Netflix, and then we go to bed and get up and go through our routine. Next thing you know, you're like, damn, a month went by and nothing's happened. It's like, what are the action steps? And I know when I was a practicing financial advisor, which, I'm not anymore. I still own the company, but I don't see clients anymore. We always talked about clients taking action. You say you want to save for retirement. You say you want to pay on your bills. You say you want to set aside money for college for your children. What are your action steps? And we kind of came to the consensus, Tina, that having a financial plan, was the glue to everything. And I know you don't have a financial plan in the world you're in, but you have the equivalent of a financial plan, right?
Yes, I do. And I agree with you. Everybody should have a plan. And so my book, it's really a plan for your life. How will you plan to thrive? What will you do? And too many of us, what I have found is a lot of people are just staying in one place. They're miserable. They're unhappy with their careers, their life. They're not making money in their business. But they're not making changes. They're staying in the same place. And so I really believe that when you take action, you're moving in the right direction. And you're not just sitting, doing nothing, like you had mentioned, on a couch and just hoping that things are going to get better. It begins with making a decision that you want things to get better. But how will I do it is so important. So having a plan.
Every choice you make has a consequence. And,
yes, it does.
I do this each day when I'm thinking, okay, I want to run on my elliptical, for an hour and 15 minutes is probably what I do normally. There's times I don't want to do it, I'd rather finish that binge show I was watching or, go up and make dinner or something. But there's something in me that just says, you know what, the feeling that I'm going to have. And it's like the 5 to 10 minute mark is when I think, all right, I made the right choice. I feel really good. And then I get to a minute, I go a minute 20, I go, I try to keep challenged, but it's that first step. And Antarctic Mike and Mike Pierce, who's a good friend of mine, he talks about penguin steps. He's one of the first Americans to ever run an ultramarathon on the glaciers of Antarctica.
Wow.
Like 15 years ago. He's awesome story, but he talks about penguin steps. And I use that metaphor, that analogy a lot with my days. Like, I'm not going to get to where I want to take Living Undeterred or where I want to take the tour or where I want to take my podcast overnight. You know, I'm not going to lose weight overnight. You know, you're going to have to take penguin steps. And so when I was reading through your book, you said the 7 steps to thrive in life and business. Let's take penguin steps and let's navigate through the acronym F.R.E.E.D.O.M. Okay. How'd you like that segue?
I like that. I like that.
So, F.R.E.E.D.O.M. What's the F stand for?
So the F stands for faith.
Okay.
So it is faith, and in the book there is a lot of scriptures that I have, and for me, it's the foundation in life. It's believing in yourself, having that faith that you can do something, whatever it is that you want to accomplish. So it's really begins within.
Can faith be subjective?
It can be subjective. It can be subjective. For me, what it was is that I just wanted to say, okay, how can I express faith for other people? Because not everybody is going to be spiritual and believe, so I wanted to make sure that I took care of that. And it's really that inner belief in yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I write about that in my book. I really struggled with how to talk about faith because I was coming from a grief and trauma perspective, losing a son to an overdose. And so, faith to me, I was trying to relate that to the people reading the book. And as I dug deeper into faith and looked into definitions, and I read your chapter a couple times on that definition, and faith does have a sense of uniqueness to it, especially if you're agnostic. If you're not if I say if you're not a man of God, your faith is not in God, your faith is in man. Let's say, So I think for some people that, as you said so eloquently, that aren't spiritual, faith can have a different meaning to it. Like I have faith. Well, in my book, I write about I had faith that when the doctor prescribed Adderall, that my son wasn't going to get addicted. From that perspective, faith meant a whole different thing. I had faith in the medical profession that they were doing the right thing. Yes. So I think there's a lot of ways we can look at faith differently. But ultimately, if you use faith as an inspiration to change your life in a good way, then it shouldn't really matter how you define it.
Yeah, it shouldn't matter how you define it. And, as you know, I lost a daughter as well. And my faith was tested. Because I wrote this book before that happened, and I had to go within me to say, okay, whoa, how do I now move forward? And it's coming from a position of strength for me that I believe that there's a bigger purpose. And so have faith now for me, it's a different meaning, is that I still believe in myself. And that is a foundation, and that it does begin with me. But now I'm looking at it that faith is really believing that there's something else coming. There's a different purpose.
Right.
And just believing that that's going to happen. But I don't know how it's going to happen. I just believe in it.
I like the way you compared it to hope.
Yes.
Because I do think there's a distinct difference between the two,
There is.
Hope to me is, crossing your fingers, closing your eyes, wishing things happen in your life better. Whereas faith is like, if I keep eating healthy, I will lose weight. If I keep working out, I will look better in the mirror. If I keep reading, I'll become more educated on topics that I don't necessarily agree with. And I think faith has a little bit of undeterredness to it, a little bit of resilience to it. It's not giving up. Whereas hope, I think, in a way, you almost are giving up. It's almost like, geez, I hope I get better.
That's right. That's right.
And that's one of the reasons why. That's one of the reasons why I did the tour. I sat around, kind of gotten tired of just hoping that mental health would get better, hoping that, kids would stop dying of overdoses or adults to stop dying. And I just said, you know what? I need to go out and do something. Hope isn't working anymore, Not that we shouldn't all hope. I mean, it's free.
Right. But I think you're absolutely right, because hope is, you're not taking action with hope. You're just
right.
hoping, but nothing could change. But you have hope. Like when my daughter was sick, I had hope that she was going to get better, but I still needed to take action and have the faith that she was going to get better. So I believed in it and I kept moving forward. So hoping is you're staying on the sideline and not doing anything. So I applaud what you're doing, that you're not just sitting there hoping for things to get better in the addiction space.
Do you talk publicly about what happened to you?
I do.
Okay.
I do with my daughter.
I know
yes,
some people are comfortable talking about it, others aren't, and I never want to impinge on that right to not talk about it.
I do. I, lost my daughter to cancer, and at a young age. And like I said earlier, my faith was tested because I am a believer in God. And for those of you listeners, whatever you believe in is great. And I was tested, but it kept me moving after she passed away, that my faith now is that there's something bigger to do in the world. And how can I now help other people that have lost a child?
A way I've looked at this, and I got this from, I heard this from somebody, I can't remember who, but they said, do you believe things happen to you, or do you believe things happen for you? And I think I was driving my car on some podcast, because that's all I do is listen to podcasts. And some guru guy was saying this, and I stopped my car and I'm like, I got to pull over and write this down. This is just so spot on to how I think one of the big problems with the mental health issue in our country and in our world is our inability to look at things that happen to us in a different way, and to change the narrative and say, you know what, my son died of heroin. This happened for me. This didn't happen to me. My wife died of alcohol abuse. This happened for me. Now, what I mean by that is this. Obviously, it sucks. I cry. I hurt. I'm a tortured soul by definition, but I'm not letting it control what I do every moment of each day. And the for me perspective has really made me look at death and things like anything that happens to me. I say to myself, Jeff, did this happen for me? And the answer is always yes, 100% of the time. You lose your job, it happened for you. Your girlfriend breaks up with you, it happens for you. You get divorced, it happened for you. And again, I think this would help people not play so much woe is me, the big pity parties that we have. And we're looking up at the heavens going, God, why did you take my son? God didn't. Heroin laced with fentanyl did. I mean, that's pretty clear to me. Unless God's in the drug business, which I don't think he is. God didn't take my son, and God didn't do anything to make it a sign for me. It's up to me to find out my purpose and my meaning. But I know exactly why my son and my wife aren't here. It's very clear to me. It was a set of poor choices they made. So back to your book on faith, I think F is a great way to start your journey through your book. So let's talk about the R.
Okay, let's talk about R.
So we're going to go through freedom for those people trying to understand where you and I are going with this. We just talked about the F in her book, and that's faith. So let's talk about the R in freedom.
So R is release. And
release,
what that means,
okay.
Release. It's learning to let go of the outcome. So as we're talking about faith, it's things happen for us, and I do believe that things happen for us. I do. It's something that I've had to shift my own thought, because the first thing we say is, why is this happening to us? So the releasing is to not to want to control the outcome, because we tend to want to be controlling and want the outcome to be the way we want it to be. But so releasing is really letting go that everything's going to work out the way it's meant to work out. When I got laid off from my job, I've been laid off, got divorced, lost a child. All of these things, I have to release and let go of them. Now, it's a process. I believe it's a process. It takes time. However, whatever challenge that we are faced with, it's we got to not got to. I invite everyone to really think about letting go. How can you release it? How can you let go of that? And it comes from a lot with our mindset, but mindset is the M in the word. I'm going to get into that later, but it's really coming from that point of releasing, to just not being in control.
And I've struggled with the letting go part because
Me too.
I think there's an illusion, in a sense, to say, I know, I understand what people mean by you need to let it go, but in a specific, unique case of death, it's like, yeah, I understand that, but I don't want them to die either. And they do die if I stop talking about them. And so for me to continue, and what I do is I call this absorption. I'm absorbing their death into my story now. It's part of my framework of my story. It's not their story anymore. It's my story. You know, they're not here.
That's right.
So
That's right.
they continue through my story. And that's how you carry on the legacy of people that have predeceased us. And so letting go is interesting because if you talk to somebody who maybe's been sexually molested versus losing a child, it's a whole different thing to say to somebody, well, just let it go. You've been molested at 7 years old by your cousin. Just let it go. Well, wait a minute. You know, it's one thing letting go the death of a child or death of a spouse, but if something happened to you physically. So I think there's a lot of dialogue there that we can benefit from having these conversations about what does let it go mean? You know, what do you really mean by let it go? You mean forget about it? You mean repress it? What do you mean?
No, not forget about it, because it's not forgetting about it. It's that going through the process of how can I move forward? How can I learn from this situation? Right. Okay, now being molested, yes, definitely you need help. You need to get help from an expert. I'm not a therapist by any means. And it is really something that is so deep within us. Like, how do I let go? How do I release the anger? How do I forgive that person?
I like releasing better than letting go. I think releasing is a healthier, more optimistic word. Letting go almost sounds, man, I don't know. Just something about letting go. I just, or get over it mentality. I'm not really sure those are productive in this day and age today. I think to say someone, you need to release, you need to absorb and release it. So it's part of your story going forward, but it's not weighting you down by your ankles.
Right, it's not.
It's pulling you up.
It's pulling you up because you're releasing from what's holding you back. What is holding us back from moving forward? And so the word freedom for me all came from, being in a corporate career that I didn't want. I didn't like to be, in a career. And I've said, I love freedom. Freedom is a value of mine. How can I create this messaging that all of us should have the freedom? Okay. And these 7 steps is really to find the way to thrive. How can we move forward? And some of us are surviving right now, but the goal is to thrive, to really go from that space of
It's
surviving.
funny you say that, because I'm working on my second book, and I talk about this exact thing you just talked about. Is, in grief and trauma, they talk about surviving, trying to survive. And I'm like, screw that. I have no desire to survive. Who wants to just survive? But thrive makes sense. And it sounds like survive. It's a good segue, But I've kind of used the word evolution now. I want to evolve myself. So there's a chapter in my book, which coincidentally was my old book, called The Evolution of Self. And it's the concept of when my son died, a part of me certainly died as well. But a part of me was reborn, and I evolved into a different type of person. And it happened again with my wife. And so I'm trying to tell people out there that when things happen to you, survival's the foundation. You've got to build the basic foundation. Obviously, you've got to survive first. Mm-hmm. Then you want to thrive the best you can. But you really want to evolve. You want to shed that skin. You want to really change. And so one of my 3 tenets of living undeterred, my third one, is evolution. And not from not from a religious like evolution versus religion type thing, but more of evolution of the self, evolution of you that, I'm not the same person that I was even since you and I last talked. And you're not the same person.
No.
You look the same, but you're not. You're different. And
Right.
we shed skin every day, literally. And we also should shed memories and the things that are negative that hold us down. And so I like that. I like the thrive, and I like the evolution part of what you're talking about. I think there's a really good complement there. But that really got my attention when I was reading your book, when you talked about the thriving part.
I love the evolution because we are different because of our situations that happen. And we are, I believe, with our challenges, we're reborn, like you said. I am a different person, and I look at life differently since my daughter having passed away. And the lessons of life, the lessons that I've learned. And that's why my second book will be all about how do you navigate through loss? And how can you go from pain to peace?
Yeah, because I think
going through that.
people want a template where you open it up and say, this happened, this is what you do. And there could be 8 million books on grieving. It's not going to matter. Each person's got to get their own unique way. I know when Kubler-Ross came out with their stages of grief, we studied back in college.
Yep.
I went back when I wrote my book and looked at the stages of grief, and the words have even evolved. We don't even use some of the same words that she was using and some of the same definitions. And I noticed they were out of the order. I didn't grieve in the order that she said you grieved. I mean, some things I did were just so backwards, like acceptance and shock and all that. There was just and bargaining, all these different things that she has. They weren't in the same order that I think she had talked about in her book. And so I think that's important. The grief, processing grief is such a personal thing. But let's get into the E. So we have the F, R, and now we have back-to-back E. So let's get to the first E in freedom.
Okay, so the first E is evaluation. It's looking at the bigger picture. It's looking at where have you made progress? Where is your progress been? Where are you going? And so it's really assessing your systems, assessing your, in your life, what has worked for you, what has not worked for you. But it's stepping back really and looking at the bigger picture instead of looking at the problem. I look at it this way. Just evaluate where you are right now, but where you were got you to where you are now. Okay, and we're going to make changes in life. So you want to go through an evaluation process. And when I was in my corporate career, I was evaluating what did I want to do. I don't want to be here, and I had to really looked at my skills, I looked at my strengths, what did I desire, what were my passions, and I really evaluated that and looked at the whole big picture and really visualized where I saw myself going. And so you want to really look at that and step into the bigger picture instead of having a tunnel vision.
How do we do that?
Well, one of the things that I always recommend is creating a vision for yourself. It's really writing down your goals, okay, what you want to strive for.
Is that a vision board, basically?
A vision board. I don't know if you've done them, but I've done them. I host vision board workshops, and it's really creating visual images of what you want to bring into your life. And it's not just putting pretty pictures on a board. It's really intentional with what do you want to bring in and really having that picture of your life. And so when you talk about evaluation, it's really viewing that, really looking at this is what I want to do and stepping back to looking at that. So that's one tool. Another tool is really, with goals, because I talk about that in the book, is about goals. It's writing it down. So even with the valuation, it's write down what you want, journal it. Okay. I'm a firm believer in journaling, meditation, all of that. The visualization are some tools. I've also done Reiki. Reiki is a whole nother aspect, but I love the journaling. I love the meditating. I pray, as well. But for those of you here that are listening, it's really stepping back and looking at your progress, because we've made progress, and it could be one little thing that you've made a progress in. but look at everything you've done.
It's
So
the
that's
penguin steps, right?
it's the penguin steps. I love that. I know I love that metaphor, the penguin steps, because I look at it small baby steps. What can you do every
Right.
day moving closer to what you desire?
Yeah, and I think and you're a life purpose coach. I want to have you talk about what that actually means, because I've had high performance coaches on. I've had life coaches, and it seems like there's a lot of names out there, but I'm not sure if there's a lot of overlap in those different types of titles. But I've always been more curious in how do we attain, not how we attain, but how do we stay on top of the mountain. So getting there is often not the hardest part, and losing weight, those type of things are fine, but then you wonder why someone just puts on all that weight back very quickly, because lots of fads and diets and things to shortcuts don't work. But how would you answer the question, okay, Tina, I want to hire you as my life purpose coach. I'm hiring you to make sure I stay on top of my life, not to get anywhere. I don't have goals. Like I don't want to get to X. I feel like I'm already there. I want to stay there. I don't want to go backwards. So what do you do as a life purpose coach to get people to maintain where they're at, not to actually try to get somewhere? Do you understand what I'm saying?
I do. And, it's your daily habits. It's
Right.
discipline. It's how motivated are you to stay there? Like how bad, like you lost 20 pounds.
Right.
Okay, so let's say that was a goal. I've lost the 20 pounds. I look good. I feel good. Okay, it's the habits, the daily habits that we implement in our life every day that will keep you at that place. So what will it be for me to stay losing the pounds? Having lost 20 pounds, I want to maintain that, right? Well, it's the daily habits of I know what I got to do, eat healthier, exercise regimen, mindset, because I also, I'm going to talk about mindset in my book here, but mindset has a lot to do. Like, how do we talk to ourselves every day?
Mm-hmm.
What fuels us? Like, why do we want to have that weight? How do we feel about ourselves is so important
What's the
as
biggest
well.
thing that sabotages us? Is it self-doubt? Is it self-criticism? Is it that person inside of us that's kind of the negative person that's
It is. It's self-doubt. It's self-doubt for me. It's that inner critic. I call it the head trash. We keep saying bad things to
mm-hmm.
ourselves, and then you motivate. Then you get tempted. Oh, I really want to have that piece of cake. Okay, I'll worry about it tomorrow. It goes
Right.
back to your mindset. Say, I know this is what I want to do. It's discipline. I think it's discipline, and it really is that inner critic that we need to shift our thoughts to think differently. And but it takes discipline. It takes those
It
daily
does,
habits.
especially when some of these things that you talk about aren't happening overnight. And so you can look in the mirror and say, I want to lose 10 pounds. And then 2 days later, you look the same and your weight's the same, but you're busting your ass, working out. And there isn't that immediate gratification. And today we live in a very short world where there's instant gratification. I mean, TikTok videos are 15 seconds or whatever it is. I mean, it's people are moving on to the next
Crazy.
thing. There's no commitment to discipline anymore, and that's probably one of the reasons why we have such a mental health issue in our country is the discipline for personal mental health. The meditation. I've got friends of mine that haven't meditated yet. Why? Well, I just don't have time in the morning. Okay, I don't believe anybody doesn't have time for something if they don't prioritize it. I mean,
I was just gonna
I
say
swear I could find
prioritizing.
time
Yep.
in my busiest day I've ever had in my life. I could find 15 minutes to meditate. I just don't want to.
I think that people are making that as an excuse. I don't have
Right.
time, and it's an excuse. It's an easy excuse. It's a way out.
Right.
And you will find the time when something is so important to you. You'll find the time. You'll make the time.
Right.
And it's really okay. Put it in your calendar. I'm committed. It's commitment versus just interested that I'm just going to
Mm-hmm.
do something. But how committed are you to that? How bad do you want something? I made a commitment. I wanted to leave my corporate career
Yeah.
back in 2018. I was committed and I took action. and created daily habits to get to
what?
that goal.
One of the problems is the difficulties for us to see short-term pain is long-term gain. And it's difficult for us to see what our life looks like 6 months down the road. If each one of us took 6 months and really focused on a few things, whether it's strengthening your mind through meditation, reading, yoga, whatever you want to do, and you did it, I don't think 6 months it becomes a habit. What's the old saying? 21 days or something. There's a saying out there.
21 days.
Is it 21 days?
Bit longer. Yeah.
Yeah. Imagine if you did 6 months of something, not every day, but you really were focused on it, and quite often it's not 3-4 hours a day. Sometimes it's 5-10 minutes, 15 minutes. Especially at my age, I'm 55. It's like I can't have 2-hour workouts like I used to, and now I'm just look at my calorie counting and look at how many miles I went. I don't look at the intensity of the workout anymore. It's like I could be sitting on my couch, so anything I'm doing is better than that.
That's right.
And one thing talk about penguin steps, where I really love this, I got from Mike, is when I run on my elliptical, I trick myself, because if I knew I was going to run for an hour and a half, let's say, I probably wouldn't do it. So I set my clock at like 20 minutes. Okay. And I get to like 17 and 18, then I bump it up to 30. And I get to 25, I bump it up to 40. And so what I do is my first resistance barrier, I set my clock at a certain time, and then when I get close to it, then I just keep adding it. So it's like, I remember when my dad used to train Labrador retrievers. He used to train puppies, dogs. And this will sound humane now, or this will sound cruel, but this was back when I was a kid, 7, 8, 9, 10. But my dad used to take these Labradors out in the boat with our boat, and he would put them in the water, and he would run the boat like 5 feet from them and let them swim. And the dog didn't know how far he was out from shore. He just saw the boat. So he kept swimming right to the boat. My dad kept going further and further. And the dog didn't know how far he was swimming. He was just thinking about trying to catch the boat. And that's, I know Labradors know how to swim anyway, naturally, but that's how my dad was teaching the dogs to, and I don't know what the actual story is in that, but it's interesting when you think about it, where sometimes if you focus on something like I do, I'm not focusing on an hour and a half run. I'm focusing on getting to 20 minutes and then 30, then 35, then 40, like the dog was just trying to catch the boat. I just think there's a story in that as we set goals. Maybe it's just break things down those penguin steps again. Don't look at losing 20 pounds, lose 1, and then lose 2, and then lose
it's those
4.
small baby steps. Right. It's those small baby steps. I'm
Right.
reading a book right now, Atomic Habits.
Yeah, I've read it by James Clear.
Yeah,
Great book.
and great book. And he talks about that 1%.
Yeah.
And it's what can you do every day that's a little bit better.
Yeah.
Like if you want to make calls, okay, instead of 50 calls, do 10, do 5, do 1.
Yeah.
Even 1 is better
Yep.
than doing 0. So those are
Right.
the things we talk about. So that's what evaluation is really about. It's really looking at your progress, evaluating what can you implement, what can you reflect on, what can you change, are those steps.
So we have faith, release, evaluation. What's the next E in freedom?
Energy. I love
All right.
this one.
I like that one.
Everything is energy, I believe. And it's where we're putting our attention on, okay? And whatever we focus on expands. So for me, I talk about in the book about money. Money is energy, but we're all energy. And we bring things in our life through energetically. And so it's really that are we focusing on the good things? Or are we focusing on the negative? Where's our energy going? Where are we focusing our attention on all the time? Our activities, our life, are we looking like, for example, is our energy focusing on what's going on in the world right now with the COVID and everything around the COVID? Or are we focusing on healthy habits? Are we working on how can we be positive? How can we shift our thoughts to think differently? So where are we putting our energy is so important. That has to do with the freedom that I want.
So where do distractions come into play? Because with the way things are today, with geez, Facebook, LinkedIn, TikTok, Snapchat, Netflix, Hulu, Prime, network TV, it just never ends. I mean, the hardest thing for people to do today is to be bored.
The hardest thing is to be bored, to do nothing, because they have to always do something.
Well, then they have to talk to the one person they don't want to talk to, and that's themselves.
Yep, exactly.
Nobody wants to talk to themselves because that's too terrifying.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. So your question is, how does distractions? Well,
yeah.
Yes, distractions, those time wasters that we have in our life. How can we? Well, I think it really goes back to, again, discipline and not allow the distractions. Yeah. Like, for example, set an intention. I'm not going to watch the news. I'm going to turn off the news and make it a habit. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to watch the news because it's distracting me and turning me into a different person. Mm-hmm. And I'm allowing what they're saying into my inner being. And fear can come in because, it's all about fear when we watch that as well. And we start to think differently. So the distractions it goes back to, again, what am I going to focus on? I don't want to be in that direction. And it's really, again, personal intentions. We make a decision every day to choose what we want to do. We can choose our attitude. We can choose to turn off the TV. We can choose what we want to eat. We can. We can't choose the weather. We can't choose, it's how we react to different situations. So we can choose how to react.
Yeah. I had a question I was going to ask you. I'll remember now, but this is my attention deficit. So I've got so many questions I want to ask you, but okay. So we'll keep moving. So, energy was what you said. So they were on D. So freedom. We've got faith, release, evaluation. And energy. You have to help me remember these.
Yes, energy.
And then the D.
D is determination.
D? Okay.
So determination here, it's that whatever obstacle you go through, how determined are you to make it through? Mm-hmm. I was determined to get out of corporate. I was frustrated, unhappy, and fulfilled, and I made a decision I needed to be out. And I was determined that I was going to do no matter what it took to make it happen. So when we're fueled by our passion, we are going to be determined to do whatever it takes no matter what. And it really goes back here. It's knowing our why. Why are we doing what we're doing? What is fueling us to move forward? That no matter what.
Yeah, I say,
gonna make it.
When you find your why, you'll find your way.
Yeah, when you find your why, you'll find your way.
It reveals itself,
It does.
And it may take 50 years. It may take, 70. I don't know. But I think that's so key about trying to find, balance and peace and harmony in your life as you find a passion. And there's so much written on finding a passion, but I think it finds you. I don't think you can find a passion. I think that's an illusion again. Yeah, I don't think you can sit around going, okay, what's my passion? What do I want to do the rest of my life? I think, and in my case, it certainly revealed me. I loved doing investments. I loved for 32 years since I was 23 being my own boss, just having my own everything, clients, schedule. It was great. But then a life event happened, and all of a sudden my real passion fell on my lap, and it came in the form of death. And I had a meeting a couple months ago, and we go around the room. It was kind of similar to an AA meeting, and everybody had to say what they're grateful for. And I'm trying to be creative and think, well, what can I say to make a point? I don't want to be grateful for, my parents and my cat and my I wanted to be a little bit more creative than that. Everyone's grateful for that.
Yes.
So I said, I'm grateful for death. Yeah, you hear a pin drop. It's like,
they must have been
because they knew what happened to me. But they're like, how can this guy possibly be grateful for death? And the way I went back to framing it, and which is a little bit what we talked about a few minutes ago, was, first of all, it's happening to all of us. We have this false expectation that I understand death is going to happen to all of us, but it's just not going to happen to me. It's just not going to happen to people around me, but it does. And it doesn't always happen in the right order. And so I just reframed it as I was grateful for what death did to make me a better human, not a bitter human. And so determination, as you mentioned with the D, is, resiliency, it's grit, it's undeterred. All those words, I think, kind of are the same thing as determination. But I say that's one of the best acronyms in your book is determination. So have you always been this way? I was going to ask you that question. I mean, I know my life story and kind of I've been a type A and I've been a competitive sports person, but it's like, have you always been like determined person, where always been resilient, or did you have periods of your life where you just struggled and all of a sudden one day you kind of saw the light?
My family thinks that I've always been determined, and I was always a fighter. I was always a take charge. I was always the type of person that, I doubted myself. I had a scarcity mindset. I really grew up feeling insecure with myself and all of that. And it took years of personal development and surrounding myself with the right people. That is also important.
You just got me to remember what I forgot.
Oh, okay.
Toxic relationships.
Yes.
I wanted to ask you about that. You just said surrounding the right people, and my attention deficit kicked in. Now I remembered. I was going to ask you about the impact of toxic relationships with your F.R.E.E.D.O.M acronym. Where would that fit in?
Yes. So, all right. So with toxic relationships, yes. So I grew up in toxic relationships in my upbringing. I was always brought up in a family of scarcity, and everything was bad. Instead of good things, it was always bad. Everything was bad. So some of my toxic relationships were family, okay, that I had to kind of limit my time with them. And one of them was my father, and he's still alive today, and God bless him. He's great, resilient. I get a lot of his resilience. I get a lot of the resilience from him. And the strength is something that he has, and I have strength and resilience. But toxic relationships is something that you really need to look at. And how is it's bringing you down, and you really need to assess your relationship. So when you look at evaluation too, it's looking at your relationships that you have.
So toxic relationships would fall under the E for evaluation?
Yeah, I think so.
That makes sense.
It could, because I see that you got to evaluate your friends. Evaluate, okay, so with family, limit some time you have with them and create boundaries.
You can't do much about your family, but you certainly
can't do much about your family, but you can create boundaries. Like you can create boundaries and say, I'm not going to allow you to
talk politics around me.
Right, like you really, you're creating boundaries for yourself, which is so important to do.
Interesting.
Does that help you?
It does, because when I was going through your F.R.E.E.D.O.M, I was trying to think of things you didn't, obviously you have so much time in your book, you can't cover every aspect of human psychology, but I was trying to figure out where certain things would fit in, and toxic relationships is a really big one that I like to talk to about people about mental health, because there's a lot of people that say that you write down on a piece of paper your 5 closest people that you hang out with, okay? Your 5 people you spend most of your time with, and you'll become those 5.
You could.
And if it's 5 people that are unemployed and doing drugs and breaking into houses and lying to each other and cheating on each other, and that's your circle of friends, well then, what makes you think that you're going to be the odd one in the group? You probably won't be. We gravitate to likeness. That's just human nature. Is our cliques and our groups tend to almost look like us sometimes and act like us, and we become who we associate with. And toxic relationships, especially for adolescents. And then I see marriages that, some of my friends, and I wouldn't say close friends, but I know people that are in marriages that are toxic, and they're not happy with their lives. And it's a tough one. How do you get out of a toxic relationship is tough. It's hard.
It is hard. It is hard. And, I was in a marriage that I wasn't happy with, and it was kind of toxic. I was unhappy. Now, there was no abuse or anything like that. But it was toxic in the sense that I, not appreciated, not valued, things like that. But I made a decision because it's going back to your inner self. Like, what do I want? Where do I see myself going? And it's making that decision and moving forward and not looking back. For me, not looking back was great to do in that situation. Not everybody can do that. For me, it's knowing yourself, like knowing what you want and what you want to achieve, and knowing who you are as a person and your beliefs, okay, which
Mm-hmm.
is in my mindset that I talk about. But so that's where I think toxic relationships would be in valuation.
Yeah, I mean, again, you look at so many of these books like yours that have these, what I think are pretty clear steps. You follow these steps, you should have a pretty good life.
Right.
But then, if you're an alcoholic, or if you do drugs, or if you're a compulsive gambler, or whatever your addiction or substance use disorder is, when you sprinkle that in to the foundation of some of these, ideas or books, it crumbles, and it's very difficult to maintain any semblance of a happy life when you're drunk all the time, or you're doing drugs all the time, or you're lying all the time.
Yes.
And I'm not just
Yes.
I'm not just trying to be disparaging towards addicts or alcoholics, but people lie a lot too that don't do drugs and don't drink. So it's like, but those unhealthy aspects of your life can really, poison your success at trying to be a happy person.
Right. It does.
And that's why
It
mental
does.
health is such a big deal in our country. It's just there's
It
just
really is.
there's so many things that are picking away at people's quality of their life, and it's not just sometimes one thing; it's a number of things. And
It is.
I think I like your the freedom acronym because it's easy to understand, and
Good.
but there's other things outside of it that you really have to get under control, and a lot of it's your addiction and substance abuse issues that we have in our country.
Absolutely. And what you're doing is absolutely so much needed, amazing, and you're going to help so many people coming from that. And you've experienced it, and your story is so powerful to share. And that's the thing, too. Our stories, our experiences that we've had, and we need to share our message to the people, to others, because there's so many people that are going through such difficult times right now.
Yeah, and you're not on my show because of your story. You're on my show because of the actions that you're taking from your story. And
Yes.
living undeterred is what I'm trying to show people. I'm not teaching anything. I'm not a. That's the last thing I'm trying to do. I'm trying to show people how to be undeterred. And
Yep.
by doing what I'm doing, it's proof that you can have the worst possible things happen to you in your life, yet still be in awe of life and in reverence of death at the same time. I have just as much respect for death as I do my awe and my love for life. And it's not a fear of death; it's a respect for it. And that respect makes me be grateful for just even having a conversation with you today is special because I may not be here tomorrow. This may be the last conversation I ever have, ever.
It's true.
When I see
It's
my
true.
son, half an hour ago, I think to myself, I may never see him again. And that's not a perverse way to live. It's just a realistic way to live. And that's my
it is.
first foundation of the living undeterred mindset is having realistic expectations, And I think we run through life just with this fantasy world belief, comparing ourselves, to everybody that's successful. And I do that. I'm guilty of it. You talk about imposter syndrome in your book. I read that part
Yes.
and I chuckled
Yep.
because, again, I think imposter syndrome has been great for me because I want to get better.
Right.
I see someone doing a podcast better than me. I'm not pissing and moaning. I call Molly and I go, I want a new microphone. I want a new camera. To me, imposter syndrome is a good thing.
It is a good thing.
But for some people, for many people, and the way it's presented in the media is it's a bad thing. Just like attention deficit is a bad thing. These aren't. I don't think we have to accept these as truths. I really don't.
Yeah. No, that's a good point that you make. I know, for me, the imposter syndrome, it's been really like I've always been I've doubted myself. I look at other people thinking they're better. I had the comparison sabotage, and that was
Right.
one of my sabotaging behaviors that I had was comparing myself. And I really had to be work in progress and talking to myself and really thinking differently, like know your value. I know what my value is, what my message. We're all unique. We all have different stories. We all have different gifts and
Right.
talents to share.
Okay.
So that's
What's the
the
O?
determination. Okay. Oh, we're almost done. Optimism is the O. So optimism, it's similar to determination in the sense that being optimistic, again, you're weathering the ups and downs of life, and what are the strategies that you're going to implement in whatever's going on with you. And it's really about having that mentality, that you're weathering the ups and downs no matter what you go through. And it's being optimistic. Now, can you be optimistic all the time? No.
Right.
No.
That's the toxic positivity that I hear about.
Yes. Okay.
Being
You
too
can't.
positive. Right.
And I'm not trying here to be Pollyanna, you could be
Yeah.
optimistic every day. No.
Right.
Life happens. We react differently. Depends, how do you react to situations? But can we look at things, okay, when you said earlier, what happens to me or for me?
Mm-hmm.
So if we look at the situation that at hand, like when I lost my daughter, when I lost my job, I looked at it, two different situations, but when I lost my job, I said, okay, a door just closed here, but another door is going to be open. I don't know how, but it's going to be.
Yeah, always.
I was optimistic that something was going to open up. So it's really being optimistic that things are going to work out the way they're meant to work out.
How's that different than faith?
So faith for me it was more of that believing in God.
Okay.
Okay.
For you, right?
For me.
Yeah.
For me.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Because when I wrote the book and I was thinking about the word freedom, I'm like, okay, what do I want to say for F? And it's that faith, that believing in myself, but believing in God or believing in a higher power, no matter what you believe in.
Yeah.
Or not.
The higher power thing
don't.
is interesting because I know in Alcoholics Anonymous that they now talk a lot about the higher power.
Yeah, that's what I've heard too.
Because I have known people, my wife included, that didn't want to go to AA meetings because there was too much of a religious, godly spin to it.
Okay.
And now they've kind of sensed that pullback because we are a more secular country. There's no question that there's more secular people than there are religious people, at least from the trends standpoint. Which one's grown faster in the last 20 years for millions of reasons. But so optimism and faith, I'm thinking to myself, what's the difference? And I think faith does probably have a little more spiritual. It
has more of a spiritual, that it's the foundation in believing that there's a higher power. There's something more than me.
Right.
And that's to me, that's what it means. And for the listeners here, it may mean something else.
So optimism would be more that, I'm optimistic that if I do what I need to do today, if I need to work out, eat healthy, sever toxic relationships, I'm optimistic if I follow the process that I'll reach my goals that I want in my life. That's kind of optimism, right?
Yeah, that's how I see it too. Because when you're looking at how am I going to handle this situation? Mm-hmm. What are the strategies that I'm going to implement? What are the actions I'm going to need? What are the tools that I would need? For example, we'll go back to losing weight.
Right.
What are the tools I need to lose the weight? What are the strategies that I'm going to put in place? What's the plan of action? So I
will tell you that when I meet people that are just optimistic, they're magnets, man. I mean, you just want to be around them. You just kind of want to hang around them. You want to have lunch with them. You want to talk to them, and then you meet people that aren't that optimistic, and you just don't want to be around them. At least I don't.
You don't.
I don't.
You don't, and you see things. They see things like everything that's happening.
It's like, to them.
It's to them. They're looking at it to them. Oh, poor me. I can't believe this is happening to me.
Right.
What's going on? It's always somebody else's fault. It's the economy. It's everybody else.
I used to tell my boys when they were younger, I said, I call these people emotional vampires. And they would just suck onto you and take everything from you because they want to drag you down to their level of misery and despair.
That's right.
And you need to just exercise them like it's a demon or a vampire, and literally cut ties with these people because, my boys have been in, one of them was in a very toxic relationship, and it was difficult. And the minute he drew a line in the sand and walked away from it, after a little bit of a bump, his life got substantially better. Now he looks back at that point in his life. He's like, dude, I waited I waited too long, Dad. We all do. It's called life lesson. You just don't want to repeat it too many times, but
exactly. But the main thing is that he made the decision, and he made a decision and said, that's it, I'm done. I'm moving forward.
Yeah.
And the timing had to have been right. So, so does that help you with the optimism, comparing that?
It does, yeah, it does,
okay.
Because I like to think of myself as an eternal optimist, but I have really bad moments. I can look in the mirror and tell myself I've never been depressed, but I've had very intense depressive moments.
Me too.
And just as recent as 4 months ago, I had suicidal ideation, which is shocking for people that know me.
Okay.
Just 4 months ago,
Wow.
4 years after my son died. Why didn't I have that 4 minutes after he died? But there's a story to that, and I tell it often. But my point is that optimism is important to me, and to me, I do the penguin steps every day. And the reason why I considered these terrifying thoughts 4 months ago is because I took shortcuts. And so I talk about penguin steps. Make sure I meditate, eat in the morning, pretty good in the morning, work out over lunch, eat a healthy dinner, get my 8 hours of sleep, don't watch any TV at all. I don't watch any TV. I watch all Netflix documentaries, things that I can control the narrative. Okay. But I'm not going to sit and watch Fox News poison my brain, or CNN, or any of that stuff. Even if they're right, I don't care. I'd rather be dumb and be happy than be smart and be miserable and anxious and nervous. But I'm smarter. I've always wondered why people think they need to know everything, And then they're just anxious all day about China and about we're going to become a socialistic country and our dollar is going to lose its purchasing power and blah blah blah. Okay, what are you going to do about it today? Nothing.
You can't control. This goes back to what we were saying earlier. We cannot control the outcomes of different situations. We have to let go, and it's going to work out the way it's meant. And and whatever's happening, we can't control. It's not happening in our own world right now.
Yeah, we can control certain things, but okay. M. Last 4 or 5 minutes. What's M?
All right, last 4 or 5 minutes. Mindset. So mindset. It all begins right here. Our head trash, our thoughts, getting into our actions, and which leads to results. And it all begins with having that healthy, sound mindset. We either can have a growth mindset or a fixed mindset. Mm-hmm. Are we looking towards the problem all the time, or are we looking at the solution? And this stems a lot, our mindset comes a lot from our beliefs. And I talk about that in the book, is our limiting beliefs that hold us back.
Mm-hmm. And I think of mindfulness when you say that.
Yeah,
mindfulness. When you say your mind, what comes to my mind is mindfulness, being aware of things and your thoughts and less judgmental. I think it's so easy for us to identify with our thoughts to a fault. You have a sad thought come in, and it's easy to get really attached to it. And now I start thinking about how my son, when he was a child, or maybe some play he was in, and I start dragging myself down, and I start adding more painful memories. And the next thing you know, I'm really down. I don't want to go out with my friends tonight. I just want to sit around and feel sorry for myself. And it's like being mindful. Now I've learned to say, I don't have to identify with that initial thought. I don't have to attach myself to this thought. I can let it go and die as quickly as it came into my mind.
That's right.
And that's one thing mindfulness has really taught me, is just less identification with I'm not even taking ownership of a lot of thoughts that pop into my head. It's like they're not mine. It's like someone's next to me, and somehow I rob their thought, and I'm just going to give it back to them. That's why I'm not taking ownership of it. And for me, it works. And I know for some people they can't. I know a lot of people really struggle, especially in grief therapy, when they like to go back and read diaries of their kids or look at pictures and stuff. And I can't say I haven't done it, but at this point right now, unless I can derive something positive from it, I'm probably not going to do it. You know, if I can't
Okay.
if I can't go into it knowing that something good's going to come out of it, I'm probably not going to go into it.
Okay. And you make an interesting point because, yes, in grief, you look at the pictures, you
Mm-hmm.
remember the memories, and they
Mm-hmm.
bring you down. It brings you
Mm-hmm.
down, and you start to get sad. The sadness comes in. And then, but what I've done is shifting and saying, okay, a moment it's okay to be sad, but don't continue to stay in that place,
Right.
is
Right.
what has
So
helped me.
this has been great. This has been one of the fastest hours I've ever done on the podcast. It's great to go through your acronym. What are some words of wisdom you would throw out there for people watching this that need to maybe look at life and thrive a little bit more and not just be in survival mode? And I'm talking just business too. So what are some words of wisdom you would throw out there?
I just think that really believing in yourself and knowing that you have gifts, that we all have gifts, and to value ourselves, and that life is really short, and to cherish every day. You just said it really clearly earlier. This could be our last day on earth. And so,
Mm-hmm.
why not make your dreams a reality and hold on to your dream and go after your dreams? Go after them because life, it just can change in a blink of an eye. My daughter used to say that in a blink of an eye, Mom, everything can change. And it can. So your life can be changed in a blink of an eye. So
Well,
grab it.
it's
Grab your dreams, make it a reality, and get happier.
well, you're making your daughter very proud by living an inspired life, and I
Thank
really
you.
appreciate the time you've taken to be on the show. And I'm sure people are going to reach out. And oh, by the way, let's talk real quickly.
Yes.
Your book is Freedom: 7 Steps to Thrive in Life and in Business.
Yes, it's on
And
Amazon.
yep. And then how can people reach you about your coaching program?
Okay, so my website is www.lifeisideal.com, all one word. And you can learn more about my programs. You can grab a copy of my book there and schedule a 30-minute clarity call with me as well. And would love to connect with anyone who really is looking to make a change in their life or business and really want to be happier and more fulfilled and get that joy that we all deserve. We
Well,
do
thanks,
deserve it.
Tina. Really appreciate
Thank
your
you.
time today. This has been a lot of fun.
Thank
I'm
you.
sure I will be chatting with you down the road. So, again, thanks for being on the Living Undeterred podcast. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been an honor.